There we go. Now we're here.
It,
Hi.
it's already beginning.
Welcome in. Welcome back to Comet Tales. Hope everyone is excited for some more Spelljammer pirate adventures in space. For any first-time watchers or returning viewers, how about we go through and introduce ourselves, mention any projects, streams, etc. that we've been working on. Let's start with Maris.
Oh, goody. Hello, everyone. I'm Maris. I play Miss Valentine Vonderheist, our absurdly posh sharpshooter of the gang. And when I'm not playing D&D with my friends, I pretend that I'm a streamer, and I haven't streamed in several months now. So ain't that just the way? But who knows? Maybe one day in the near future we'll see my return, in which case I usually do comfy cozy streams that usually involve reading books and talking about literature. So, hooray.
One stream a year is still it still makes you a streamer. I'd count that at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still here in our hearts. Next, we have the amazing and wonderful Lily.
Yes, hello. Um, my name is Lily. You can find me on mostly Twitter and funnily enough, now Tumblr. That's wild to feel like I'm
Yeah.
saying that. I feel like I've gone back like 10 years in my life. But either way, not so much a streamer anymore, but I do draw now. That's basically my main content at this point. But drawing trans comics, body positivity stuff, and just general fandom stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So
We
if you
love
like that, yeah.
we love to see it. The ever talented Beatrix Bunny, also known as Peculiar Little Rabbit.
Well, thank you. Yes, I do variety streams still. I'm primarily focused on roguelikes, digital artwork, especially now that I finally have my laptop, well, tablet rather, fixed, and RPGs. I still have the one tabletop campaign going on, but it looks like the light at the end of the tunnel for campaign 2, which is going to be a fairy tale urban fantasy set in Las Vegas. Spoiler warning: there's a lot of psychological horror and probably going to be some some trigger warnings there. But if you're willing to brave it out, I hope you'll swing by sometime soon for that.
Amazing. And lastly, and certainly not least, we have the ever powerful Ashala, played by Azura.
Hi, my name is Azura. I am a variety streamer myself. Although I play, I would like to say fairly nostalgic and comfy games at the minute, such as some of the older Fallout games, or I want to say Pokemon. Uh, you'll find me occasionally playing maybe once in a blue moon Baldur's Gate 3 or something else. So whatever I feel the mood for. Really, nothing's really set in stone. It's just whatever I'm in the mood for. On a little bit of a tiny hiatus as work is well, cropped up a bit more on my end. But once that dies down again, I'll probably be streaming a fair amount again in the near future.
Okay. Always good to take a break when you need it. I know I'm definitely not a stranger to taking breaks. This campaign is evidence of anything. Lastly, I am your dungeon master and host, Oliver Oswald. I mostly play challenge games, but this, running tabletop RPG games like Comet Tales, is something I have always wanted to do, and I'm so unbelievably, incredibly thankful to you, the players, the audience, for giving us the chance to tell these stories, share our adventures. I also want to give a special shout out to Borrowbound, who is providing music for our D&D sessions going forward. Go ahead and check them out. I'm going to drop a link to them in chat right here. As Twitch decides to put things in my way from chat. They have absolutely incredibly gorgeous maps that are a part of like almost little modules. I think they host certain modules with all sorts of lore in them. And all of the music you're going to hear in the sessions going forward is actually from from these modules that they compose specifically for them. So they all have their own particular unique vibe. But they said, hey, if it matches with yours, go ahead, go and use it. And I think that's super, super neat and generous of them, and I'm so incredibly thankful for that. No, do not do that. Let's dive right back into Comet Tales. And I will hit the music button and not forget where it is. In our last adventure, our party, the Crystal Dragons, awoke to the sight of a beautiful space aurora coating the edge of the Star Chaser's fleet. Such an event can only be explained by an astronomical event known as a space storm. The storm will put a damper on plans to begin exploring space immediately, as well as inviting a host of challenge amidst the party. Ashala has had a psychic awakening and has begun to hear the call of the infinite in her meditations. Lara's ethereal hands have begun to reflect the state of the galaxy-wide storm. Zuza feels a force of entropy driving a ravenous hunger. Valentine received a letter of invitation from one of the most powerful individuals from the fleet. Eben and Echo seem to have had an illusory magic glamour removed from them, revealing Eben's seemingly advanced age. Eben would go on to ask the party to obtain a memory cluster for both him and Echo. At the same time, it was discovered that the space storm had driven an aberration known as a fear onto the Crystal Dragon, seeking to harvest the party's dreams, but it was effortlessly spotted by Ashala. Resolving the threat, the Crystal Dragons intended to seek out Fania and find out how they might be able to work around the storm. After traveling to her base of operations, it was revealed that she had already moved on to another base, a casino hosted in the underside. Wanting to seek her out, Valentine requested the party go pick up her upgraded pulse rifle before proceeding to meet with Fania, and admitted to being called upon by the Weaver, said individual who is incredibly prominent and powerful within the fleet. And they had even gotten their weapon paid for in terms of their upgrade. Taking a brief moment to gather together, Zuza had spotted a particular frog-like individual, a familiar grung known as Grug Grug, was spying upon the party, hoping to make sure they traveled to visit the Weaver. Considering his adorable stature, the party chose to spare this distantly helpful yet strange frog who would reveal his name as Groba, directing them to what he described as the most safe and direct pathway leading to the underside. Following his directions, the party progressed through the abandoned mines of the Forge Master District, stepping out of the light of the stars and into the luminescence of the beating heart of the Star Chaser's fleet. Amidst the dense fog, you are able to witness the underside, a city composed of rings all circling around the foundation, a massive, luminescent silver tree mushroom that one might even mistake for a tree. As we pull that together now. It's difficult to comprehend the sheer enormity of the city based on what you've seen of the surface, given how much larger the city is than any of the above-ground districts. 4 residential districts seem to connect with one another. A city seemingly made of marble gleams amidst the darkened city. A glistening silvery white pyramid. A bustling stone and wood city with a castle at its peak. A city of fine metalwork and masonry lies before a massive forge and a temple. Lastly, a wooden city reaches out from a castle displaying brilliant banners. On both ends, a larger pathway divides 2 additional districts that you failed to fully see through the fog from your present vista. On one end, what you can make out seems to be a beautifully maintained district of wooden architecture adorned with glowing red lights, atop of which sits a large towering building near to the central ringed area. On the opposite end, a cacophony of sound reaches your ears, one that you must imagine would be a bazaar of sorts with a fine marble building at the head. Undoubtedly so, you recognize that this place is the beating heart of the fleet. And we are going to have you able to freely explore, starting from the south. You are free to progress towards any of the districts, if any of them call to you in particular.
So, do we have any idea which of these districts the Weaver finds herself in?
Well, one would assume if the spider-like nom de plume is no exaggeration, perhaps they would find themselves at the center.
Ashala, you are not super familiar with this area. You did occasionally live down here for a little bit of time, but you never really made your way around. You kind of just would come and go. If you had a mission, you would go topside and then engage with that, but not spend your time so much down here. But one thing in particular that you do remember is that the Weaver is typically not seen, and they tend to exist towards the far end of the world at large. Behind a massive gate that seems that almost no one takes the path of.
Well, while I do see that your logic is pretty sound, being that the Weaver would be at the epicenter of whatever web they would weave. Funnily enough, I don't believe is. I remember hearing word going around that the Weaver doesn't get seen very much down here. If anything, her supposed abode is to the far north, beyond a massive gate. Not too much else to say about that, other than it's apparently dangerous.
Well, then you are familiar with this place, or at least the general idea of the underground.
Just more from hearsay, mostly. I spent probably more time in one district more than any of the others. It's kind of a massive place down here.
Would it behoove us to begin our search in your familiar stomping grounds?
It might be worth if you want to explore around a bit. Although I imagine that the meeting the Weaver was kind of an urgent matter.
Well, there was also the casino, but I'm not exactly sure if we figured out which of these facilities is the abode. Perhaps the gaudy white pyramid?
DM, would I maybe know of such information? Could I do a history check or something?
Yes, you may. Go ahead and roll us a history check. See if you can recall. 20.
Yeah, okay. I'll try it.
Right.
She
A
remembers
dirty, nasty
everything.
little bunny.
As you proceeded to explain that you didn't really know everything too well, given that you've only really lived in one particular district, you then proceeded to go and list off everything you knew about each of the individual districts, starting with the Silver Serpent District, which, at the host of which is the Silver Serpent Casino, hosted by Phinia. Interesting given her love of gold, though it was something that never really crossed your mind until now. Next to that, you have one of the 4 residential districts. This one in particular never really took on a name, but it is more of like an older neighborhood that just sort of existed, and people. It's very transient in nature, so people don't tend to stay too long. Lots of old houses. If you're looking for any particular crime to be done, the Thieves Guild is hosted in this area, as well as a pretty prominent monster hunting guild.
I'm calling an old neighbor, just saying.
Next to that, you have a sort of extension of the Forge Master District from above. A lot of the dwarves who want to make weapons that you wouldn't typically want to see around can be found here. They're a little bit more scarce. You have a fairly sizable colony of just general misfits, the Misfit District itself, actually, for all sorts of individuals of different groups that couldn't really band together and form their own groups, like the Thrycreen District, the Drow districts, all on the surface, or even further back. As you recall, not too many people go in the back of the city, where the Drow typically tend to hang out. They tend to keep to themselves, but they do have quite the fancy white and silver adorned buildings, almost a little bit similar to what Fania had. You start to wonder if maybe the two things might have had a correlation of some kind. There is, in fact, a red light district,
Oh,
hosted
hell
hosted by someone you had never met, but you had heard that your father, Captain Sketh, was quite familiar with. And lastly, you do recall that there is the Black Market Bazaar, but you are aware that a bit more unsettling things tend to be sold there, so you're not certain of how much fun it would be to go, but you know if you're looking for something, you will almost certainly find it. And lastly, there is the giant mushroom in the center, surrounded by gates, which is meant to host the arena known as Sharina. A little bit of alliteration there for some reason. No one quite knows who or where came up with it, but it does have quite a bit of a ring to it. And that is the underside, as well as the sort of abandoned path that leads back towards the Weaver.
So, are there any questions?
I must
Goodness,
say,
you seem to have a certain familiarity with this region.
Well, I mean, I've been here a fair while. You know, of course, I've nipped around. Mostly just in one place, but you hear a lot.
I see.
You must have very good ears.
When they're working.
do they often not?
It gets rowdier in some places.
Well then, should we find any sort of assistance for your ears, or...
Well, I mean, you're the healer, darling.
Well, I don't exactly know how to fix, more than wounds. It's less so that than more so just healing up wounds versus is fixing problems. I don't exactly know how to best describe it. Our nanny back home mostly took care of us if any of us ever fell ill to any sort of sickness.
Yeah, I mean, give it time, and I'm sure you'll learn to fix more than just wounds, my dear. After all, you're going to be surely patching us up here and there, and probably more so in the coming days.
Oh. Lot of responsibility, but I'll do my
In
very
the-
best.
In the meantime, no one catch any diseases while we're down here.
Should we be particularly wary of fights down here?
I mean, fights, not so much. Depending which district you go to, maybe the occasional pickpocket, maybe some rowdy neighbors, maybe duking it out amongst themselves over silly squabbles, but overall, as long as you keep your nose down and your eyes off any ongoings, then you shouldn't find yourself in trouble.
All right then. Just in case, I take the drawstrings of my money pouch, and I'm just tying that in and under my hair, so it has hair, the bat hiding in my hair, money bag, head, in that order.
How much money does Valentine have on her person?
How much money is the party holding on to?
Yo, I have
Isn't it just
1,125.
I have 53.
53. I have about 3,600.
46.
It's fine. I have like a passive perception of 19. I don't think anyone's getting close enough to steal right now.
I've got those deep-seated, hidden 18th century pockets. I'll be good.
Yes, of course.
You reach into your pockets and you feel your hand suddenly disappear, and you start reaching further, and you feel your arms start to disappear as well.
Just a bag of holding in my dress. It's fine.
The pocket of holding, yes.
Yeah,
Bustle of useful things.
Never mind the loud clinking with every step I take.
Is that the bullets or is that the coin?
You'll never know.
That would be so fun, though, as a reflavoring of armor, just a super heavy-duty, impractical gown. And it's like, you don't hit me, you hit my bustle, you hit my train, you hit my corset.
I don't know. Maybe a bag with a bear trap in it would be a funny idea.
That would be
That would be
exceptionally
funny.
cruel. I love it.
Well, I suppose if we are to... From what I'm picking up, the way to the Weaver is not exactly a well-traveled one, so perhaps to best orient ourselves to this place, we should go to the casino first. Get kind of a vibe check there.
Okay.
Very well.
That's my thought, at least. You are all free to speak up.
Well, I mean, from I mean, do you have like a pass or something to kind of like show that we're meant to go and see them or anything?
Do you think we need that?
Well, I do have the letter, and our little amphibian friend seemed to suggest that it would serve as a sort of entry pass.
I would say then yes, that would certainly take off any heat that we would get if we were to traipse there unannounced. But if you want to go to the pyramid, just to as a stop on the way there, I mean, it's certainly on the way there.
I feel... Perhaps we should go to the Weaver first. They're already expecting us.
I have an inclination that even if we don't go there right away, they'll be keeping an eye on us anyway.
Well, I mean, considering the frog friend that you've made, I'm sure there's probably more eyes than his watching us.
Do you think there's more frogs?
Well, it could be frogs, could be maybe a gith, maybe a halfling, maybe a changeling, more likely. You don't know.
Quickly look around if our frog friend is nearby.
Go ahead and roll me a perception check.
Okay. I'm relatively good at this. 13.
13 and 14 from Zuza. You don't particularly see him anywhere, but as you recall, he's quite the stealthy individual at times. If he truly wishes to be, apparently, he could be really stealthy. Although, from Zuza's understanding, he's one of those stands out so far he turns invisible types. But seemingly
Sort of
there's no
the,
sign of him.
Safety construction workers, high-vis vest of stealth.
Yes, exactly. But no, there is no sign of Groba anywhere.
Damn.
He's on his lunch break. I'm sure he's fine.
He did say he was going to go get some burgers.
So, shall we... It does seem frightfully important to speak to the Weaver.
The Weaver is asking for us, and the other is just worth showing up.
First impressions would be rather important, given the caliber of the power that the Weaver seems to hold here.
Let's go to them first. I don't want to be thinking about it too much longer.
Okay. You all make your way down through what is essentially the most prominent street and what probably would be the safest possible street to travel. You make your way down through the main street and begin to circle around near the sort of largest buildings. It's definitely more open, but at the same time, though, if any threats are coming, you will see them from a mile away. And as Ashala mentions along the way, it's likely that if you're going to run into someone, they're probably not going to attack you in possibly one of the most open streets in the underside. On one street in particular, there is a group of seemingly well-dressed women who are seemingly crying on the street, not upset crying, but as like a street crier calling out an advertisement. Ashala, go ahead and make me an intelligence save.
Intelligence save.
Oh no.
Save.
We never updated Ashala's.
I think if you have, so this is just a personal preference. If you have a proficiency in something, I definitely prefer that it gets included. Say like if you're making a check. So a check save, I would consider those similar. I don't generally like to do pure checks. So this is more of a check, but I prefer you have a better odds of witnessing.
Okay. May I ask, is this a like some sort of effect that is going to charm or frighten me?
No, it is not.
Okay, then we're fine.
As you're listening in, you recognize that the well-dressed women are calling out in Undercommon, actually. You remember that it's something of like a dialect that's sort of sprung up a lot more recently in the region, definitely a little bit before you were here, but it started to kind of take hold more than common in this territory. And in particular, you seem to notice that there's actually little words sprinkled in common, but not just common, it's in Thieves' Cant. It seems to be a sort of invitation to visit the Red Light District to receive something. You're not quite sure what the word is in particular. A pot? A potion? The word you recognize is similar to that of a container, but you're uncertain of what the direct translation is. You did at least hear something more of the overall passphrase for if you need to get to said point. I'd rather have something interesting to drink, is the phrase. But other than that, your journey towards the back is quite uneventful. You get to enjoy all of the beautiful sights of the growing crystals, the mushrooms tied into the houses, the little spores from the grand silver mushroom in the center. All of the other businesses calling out, interested in having you spend your hard-earned coin at their shop, which they assure you has the best swords in town.
That was very strange. I've never heard a group of ladies shouting about how they were thirsty just standing around there.
You follow this sparsely lit path, arriving at the outskirts of the major walls, and you recognize that there are two towers of unusually dark metals seeming to flank almost every major pathway as you cross through every main street. Gazing onto the center of the town, massive walls composed of the same materials surround the Great Mushroom. And further off in the distance, the pathway doesn't seem to progress up towards the surface. Every other pathway seems to lead to a different part of the fleet. As you may recall, the fleet is composed of several different asteroids. each of which are not necessarily directly connected. So each of these paths leads you to a separate one. So this seemingly is the dead center. Above you, you might imagine, would be the Adventurers Guild, directly above the massive mushroom. This massive gate, however, seems to lead somewhere entirely separate from the major city. If there was anywhere the elusive Weaver would reside, you imagine it would be beyond that wall. As you go up and approach, you see that there are some heavily armored drow kind of posted up in the top of the towers, and they're watching from above. They don't seem to be particularly threatened by your approach, but there is one guard that stands at the very bottom below, sort of at attention, holding a somewhat interesting-looking blackened steel halberd. They don't seem to say anything to you. Valentine and Lyra, you're actually reminded of an interesting group of soldiers from one of your trips, where the whole enjoyment of them is that they don't typically say much, and they're very, very committed to their duty. Silent protectors of sorts.
Yeah. Don't act the tourist, everyone. Don't bother the gentleman on duty. Don't, poke and prod him and, get your portrait done with him while the man's working. But I wonder if he might be able to let us through. Excuse me, sir.
You hear
Any
clink.
reaction, any...
You hear a clink as he stands at attention and turns to your direction to look directly at you.
Oh, yes. Hello. I believe we have an appointment. And she'll whip out the letter, kind of... In her mind, it's nonchalantly, but she's very much flaunting it.
Very chalant.
Very chalantly.
You can't see it through his armored visor, but you can almost feel like a sort of like almost like he's looking through you to your core, trying to kind of see who's coming through, and then gives a affirming nod and begins walking to the side, and takes his halberd and raises it to the air, and you see a light shoot out from it towards one of the towers. And you hear from one of the towers, "Faga! Faga!" And they begin to pull at the gate, and the gate begins to open wide its doors. For the first time in a long time, seemingly.
Quite the impressive mechanism.
A lot of dust seems to kind of emerge, and spores on the other side, seemingly untouched by time. There's not a trail in particular, but you do see that there is a road underneath a little bit of the spores.
Should we be concerned about the nature of these spores?
Whips out a scented handkerchief to cover her face with.
Well, I mean, there are spores kind of all over this place, and if people are living here, I assume that they're all right.
I suppose you're...
That is an assumption.
Well, you're a member of a druidic circle. Do you know much about sports?
No, I don't have exactly the most experience in dealing with funnily enough, wildlife. All things considered.
We did have an excellent grounds, though.
We did. The flowers there were particularly lovely.
Oh, we'll have to visit sometime.
My pattern was always a bit more anchored in the stars, for lack of a better word.
You see the guard is just kind of off to the side, and you just hear, and he just kind of gestures you like step through the gate, please.
Right.
Yes,
Terribly sorry.
thank you.
Gives another affirming nod back, and then kind of marches back into position and faces out towards the empty road that seemingly no one wants to walk on.
Those people are always so lovely with how they just let us be in the best of ways.
Must be a very boring post.
Well, perhaps they have some rich inner life. You never know what hobbies and skills they're learning when they have nothing else to do.
We should ask them for a novel recommendation later.
Oh,
I'm sure they do a lot of reading.
The guy's just listening to audiobooks.
That's why he was like kind of startled at first, because he had his AirPods in, and was just like, oh my god, they're here.
Fantasy AirPods, they're just these tiny little fairy robots.
As you progress further, you begin to see many thick sets of webs. You may have noticed a few of them before on the top side, and you recall them as sort of cables that hold a lot of the asteroids together. A lot of them, though, are very silvery and white, almost a little bit reminiscent of the mushroom, but you notice that a lot of them seem to be appearing here, and the further and further down this path you go, the more start to appear. You continue and begin to realize that these might not just be cables. Anyone who's interested can make an investigation check.
Oh, sure. I'm piqued.
15. 10. Okay. As some of them are finally almost within reach now, and you're close enough to kind of get a better look at them, you notice that they're not actually cables. They're incredibly thick spider webs.
Mm.
And you start to wonder how literal of a task this weaver might actually have. You getting a little bit close to them, you actually realize that some of them might be so thick that there might even be likely to stop a spelljammer at full speed. And would probably be impossible to destroy without some kind of incredible heat. As you continue to embark down the barren path, the road returns to its cavernous design. And finally, you emerge in a space that is dominated by an inverted tower. Hanging above the depths of the cavern, reaching into the misty depths like a stalactite. The tower itself is almost more like a cathedral than a building. Its design almost unlike anything other than perhaps the decorative arena. It may be the oldest building on the fleet. The precipice seems composed of thousands of wires converging to reach this singular point, anchoring the entirety of the fleet. You fall along the cliff sides, and you find yourself at the entrance gate at the base of the tower. Following along the cliffs, you arrive at the gates, where two drow glare in your direction as you approach. And as you approach, they see the sunken letter within Valentine's hand. You've arrived. The web warden awaits you in their hall. The other drow seems to be visually patting down the party. The main guard speaks up. Be honored, surfacekin. Few are granted the honor of bearing witness to this place. The two of them stand aside, and once more the grand doors open, and you enter into the main hall. You see two stairwells circling upwards, leading to the point of convergence where the tower meets the strands. The interior of the hall is decorated in stained glass and polished marble and stone. As you progress upwards, you observe the murals that are painted alongside the walls. One depicts a great meteor striking the land and darkening the skies, amidst a similar spire crumbled into ruins. A Drider bears a silvered staff leading a tattered entourage of drow behind them. A second mural shows a Tiamat-like dragon with many chromatic heads speaking with the Drider. Stones seem to hover in the heavens. A third and final mural depicts what appears to be a circular web crest overlaid upon a rocky asteroid. The dragon rests above, and the silken strands seem to extend from below. In the center, the Drider is depicted once more, their arms stretched to a starry sky with a glowing stone in their hands. An arc of arcane magic follows behind the stone. Finally, you reach the main hall, the largest segment of the inverted tower. A banquet hall is set out before you. Silvered utensils, plates, and cups line the placements. Far away from the walls, an entourage of masked drow watch from the walls. Further in the back of the room, an empty throne, almost reminiscent of a spelljammer chair, sits in the back overlooking a massive clear window showing the luminescent root of the grand mushroom. Silver glowing spores hailing down into the fog like snow. To the ceiling, a dome carries a massive counterweight of silvery web, as well as a loft of seemingly framing the sphere of webs.
Oh, goodness, if I realized that we would be attending a ball, I would have packed a different outfit.
Oh, goodness, and I'm in my riding habit.
Should we perhaps settle on a course of introduction?
Well,
Obviously, I feel that as the one that the letter was addressed to, you would be taking points.
certainly. I wasn't expecting such grandeur, though. It quite overwhelms the senses.
Perhaps it must be more important than we had initially thought they would be. I'm gonna just speak out to the guards. Should we make ourselves comfortable and sit down here?
You hear a
Oh,
voice call up from above at the lofts. No, no need. Please, make yourselves as comfortable as you'd like.
Oh, well, I don't really use chairs, so I suppose, we'll just go to the table and see what happens.
My apologies for the delay. I was preoccupied. A gentle voice calls out. As you look out above, hoping to catch a glimpse of what the Weaver might actually appear as, you see a dark, black, chitinous leg step into view from above. Sit, children. Bring a better chair for our friend here, please. One of the drow immediately shoots out and grabs what appears to be an incredibly large cushion and replaces the chair. And they're seemingly waiting for Valentine to take a place first.
Thank you. And she'll go ahead and take her seat.
You are guests who traveled from afar. Will not have you leave without obtaining your fill. My children, a small group of the drow step forward, bearing pitchers covered platters to place in the middle of the table. By the time you look back up, the massive Drider has begun their descent, holding a wire between their hind legs, until they land gracefully, yet powerfully enough to shake the entire table. Standing about 7 feet tall, they come to rest at the head of the table. Glancing above the details of their arachnid form, the Weaver wears a fine silk robe with a silver trim dancing over their darkened shirt that floats on their form, not revealing much of their previously drow body. Thick decorative glasses grace the sharp features and cover the gentle eyes that you glance upon you. Locks of short gray, web-like hair flow from their head. Lady Vonderheist, I am especially graced to see your presence. The smile is warm and comforting. A drow quickly brings them a silver gauntlet and pours a deep red drink into it.
Oh, thank you. Charmed, I'm sure. We're happy to be here as your honored guests. Although I am a little bit curious as to the reasoning of the summons. I understand it's quite exclusive an honor to be here with you.
Well, your father and I had go quite back. He was quite the rogue. He promised me the impossible, all in exchange for one woman outside of his trade network. I doubted that Victor would be capable of paying such a price, but he returned within a year. Am I to assume Lady Hilda Belvoir is your mother?
I'm sorry, you'll have to forgive me. And I hope you don't think this rude, but you see, my father did not speak frequently of the exact manner of his business dealings, let alone those he did business with. So I'm afraid that your acquaintance with him comes at quite a surprise.
So I see. Well, as you may know, perhaps, Hilda Belvoir was the name of your mother formerly, before she had run away from home. At least I assume that's the story that is told. He had gone on to fetch me an ancient artifact, one that I, in particular, have needed, one that I didn't think truly existed, in a quest that I have been attempting to complete for... How long has it been? 700 years now?
That's quite a long time to be looking for an artifact.
Indeed. It was shocking, almost, to realize that such a thing existed and that perhaps everything else was possible. The reason that I have called upon you and your crystal dragons is that I believe, much like your father Victor had done at the start, that you might be able to finish that which he started. I understand that I have not necessarily gone into the greatest of detail, but should you be willing to support my cause, I could promise you anything that each of you wish. Should you wish the fleet, I can grant you that. Should you wish the ability to liberate the planets under the command of Lex Frigate, I could provide you the resources to accomplish that. Please, don't hesitate to eat. Everything is silver, so you know that my intentions are pure. Actually, and she kind of peeks over a look towards Zuza, this is acceptable to you, yes? This is not harmful?
Oh, yeah, yes, yes, quite. I think this is more than satisfactory.
She kind of gives you a look up and down, kind of gazing upon your skin. Would you happen to require any particular forms of sustenance? I can provide, should you need.
Pretty bright, bright colors. I find to be the most appealing, but I am familiar with roughing it to an extent.
Not a problem. My children, and one of the drow starts coming forward with a different colored red wine, but it's quite vivid in color, almost like a health potion, almost. And they set that before you. I hope this suits your tastes a little bit better. I'm sure you all have plenty of questions. I am willing to answer anything and everything you may have. No need to be so frightened. I understand that my visage is somewhat frightening, but please, you are amongst friends here.
Trust me, we've seen all manner of strange and unusual beings during our series of adventures. I can assure you that frightening is not the word I would use for you. I think it would be a little hypocritical of me to judge a person's external appearance on their lower half with considering my sister.
You see a very pleased smile gently grace upon the Weaver's face.
I must ask, and first of all, I apologize. I did not realize I was speaking to you earlier. But, how much do you know about us? You seem to have connections just about everywhere, but...
The threads you've seen across the ship. Every one of those is an extension of my web, my network. One does not come to be the right hand of Lex Frigate without having some sort of network and connections. In particular, to answer your question formally, I would say I'm quite aware of almost all of you. You have Lady Vonda Heist. Ladies Vonda Heist, of course. Although you, I am not so familiar with your origins. I have heard tell that there was a ward of House Vonda Heist, but not particularly who or what they might be. You in particular are quite interesting as well.
Well, I can't say I have a fantastic idea of what I am exactly, other than just by nature a Lamia. Our father found me, and that's about all that I know, for lack of a better word. Then, bit of a journey of self-discovery, so... I mean, if there's anything that you have or any ideas, they would be much appreciated.
As you begin to describe your tale, you notice their eyes begin to drift towards your hands. Would you be able to tell me more about your condition?
She kind of hesitates. Like, there's part of her that immediately goes to hide them away, but then just kind of will actually shoot a glance over at Valentine and just kind of give her a quizzical look at first.
She'll give Lyra a little affirming nod.
Well... And she'll kind of just quickly move her left hand and just kind of pass it right through the right. As you can see, they're not exactly, corporeal. But we don't exactly know too much, other than a mostly recent discovery that they seem to be some sort of star chart of the galaxy, the universe, something of the sort. I mean, and she'll kind of hold her hand up very clearly to show the storm cloud that's currently going on. This seems to have taken hold over both the fleet as well as my body in a strange sort of way. I don't exactly feel different, but it is different.
As you begin to explain further, the Weaver's eyes begin to widen just a bit, and they place their hands onto the table, and begin to like almost awkwardly cross them, unsure of what to do with them necessarily. And they finally seem to ponder for a bit before finally speaking up. And you are, I assume, magically attuned, yes?
Yes. Mostly that of lunar, solar, and other creation magics of the stars.
And she
But-
is ever so good.
Blushes a bit, but just. I have been told, yes.
I offer this advice to you freely, but I may have more to offer given if you accept my proposition. I ask that, for your sake, you avoid using the word wish.
Well, I suppose that's all right. I can't say I've ever thought about it in that way.
Much like children gaze up onto the beautiful canvas lit in the sky, they wish upon stars. You, being an entity composed of stars, are subject to such interesting natures of magic.
Composed of stars, I mean, I am flesh and blood, but
Indeed, of course. But your lineage is one that I'm uncertain is present anymore. You are incredibly rare.
well, the Lamia are rare, but
I'm
we have
uncertain.
heard tale that there's at least a number of them on a distant planet star system. I apologize. I believe I'm speaking a bit out of turn. This is just this is a lot to take in a way.
What I will say is that you are much more than just Lamia. You are a rarity amongst rarities. That makes you quite the target to anyone who knows what you are. But I'd imagine there are very few who recognize someone who may perhaps be the last of their kind.
There's like a noticeable kind of dread that sets over her. Not exactly the the news that I would have been hoping for, but if there is any information that you might have about my kind, then well, I would owe my life to you in that way.
Forgive me, I didn't mean to distress you. Your people, your story is somewhat interconnected with mine. How interesting that both of the wards of House von der Heist are, in fact, connected to me in one way or another. She turns her gaze over towards Zuza. And you, I believe, you are Lady Sylvana, are you not?
Oh, I am indeed. I would say that I'm flattered. My reputation precedes me, but I feel like that would belittle the rather impressive network you've assembled.
Not at all, actually. Your family and mine, well, we've had some trade in the past, and I would say it is them that actually have reached out to me, being one of the prominent neutral planets out in space. And please, let me not be so rude as to ignore you. You may be the most interesting one here, given that I don't quite know who you are, and a gith is quite unfamiliar in these lands.
I was under the impression that there were more among the stars than any other person, any other race.
Oh, indeed, but among the fleet, many are bound by code either to the former Githzerai, as they were, or simply now, the Gith Yankee, who I imagine will likely just be reclaiming the term Gith, given the change that has gone on in the last 200, 300 years. It's not quite within the reaches of my web, but there has been a nature of change, though for entities like you and I, 200, 300 years may not be much of consequence when we live forever in the astral sea.
I suppose you could say a blessing and a curse to some degree. But I digress. Admittingly, there's not too much to tell other than I wasn't necessarily raised among the Gith. So my origins are a bit of a mystery, even to myself.
Very interesting indeed. While I may not be able to assist you in your quest, I may have some knowledge that might be able to point you in the right direction. Are there any other questions before I continue?
And perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sure you'll explain everything in due time. But promising such grand and fantastic rewards would imply that what we're looking for is very difficult to find or very dangerous to obtain.
There are many things that can be bought with wealth. As you might imagine, someone in my position has wealth in abundance. I could essentially purchase the entirety of every district within the Underside, should I wish to. But such a price does not buy the stuff of legend. These types of things you hear in storybooks, as one might not imagine that they are truly, fully real. But I assure you that myth is, and ever has been, within our grasp. For me, to simply just obtain such an item would be something of a fruitless task. I could send out 1,000 spelljammers all in one direction, but unless I'm certain that they will bring the correct item to me, they will not find an alternative or something that is not quite as real as the stuff of legend, I risk something infinitely worse. To tell you the truth of my nature, I was formerly the princess of my society, its only heir apparent. I had no rivals, no cousins, no power-hungry aunts who would seek to usurp me. I was promised power simply by my birthright. As I grew, I saw the flaws of my society. My upbringing would have afforded me a privilege to do much of anything I would have wanted. Yet, the only thing I desired was to break free of the destiny I was given. This was the only mistake I could not make. The Queen, my mother, had decided I would no longer serve as her daughter, and sought to sacrifice me for power to Loth. The cruel goddess laughed and chose to punish us both that day. Immune to any form of freedom, I would be made into the monster that you see before you. Immune from any relief of my current form. My mother had become infertile and was unable to spawn a new heir. I was locked away until a cataclysmic event had destroyed my home and shattered my cage. A fragment of that falling star had set me free, and with it, I wished for true freedom. But instead of liberation, I received only the knowledge of how to free myself. A task that I had previously thought impossible. The survivors of that falling star, my people, saw my fortitude as I emerged from the ashes of our shattered home and insisted that I still lead, regardless of who I had become. It was on that day I was determined to undo my transformation and to become the prince I saw in myself. Lady von der Heist, she says, turning towards Valentine. Your father promised me something that would grant my wish, and created a debt that I could not repay with infinite wealth. Should you choose to take my request and finish what he started, I will promise you anything within my power, even that of the entirety of the Star Chasers. But I can say no further unless you agree.
You see, I can certainly understand the drive that you have to accomplish your dream. I do wish I had but a little more information for what it is exactly that you're seeking. I can't feel in good conscience devoting myself, my crew, without knowing the sum of the possible dangers in aligning myself to such a cause.
And that I understand. In my case, I seek to free myself from my transformation as a Dryder and return to that of a Drow. The problem is, such a transformation is brought on by the intense will of a god, a goddess. One does not just liberate themselves even with the power of a full wish. As you may imagine, I have already tried. I have had one of the most powerful sorcerers in many worlds at my beck and call, yet she is unable to free me from such an impossible curse. But it was through that first wish that I understood that it was in fact possible. There are many such items that I require. One of which was a shard of entirely pure adamantine. Something that you might imagine would only be produced in the heart of a star. Your father had slain a solar dragon and obtained the piece for me from its hoard.
Oh, goodness, no. Listen. Our father was quite the experienced a hunter, but I mean, certainly not a dragon slayer. I mean, this is a man who would hunt foxes atop a steed. This is, I.
You would think he would have told us the story of killing a dragon if there was one, considering how you like to embellish his tales.
Solar dragons are considered harbingers of, well, stars. They are there when the star is born and will be there until the star is gone. To remove a solar dragon from its nest is considered something of a taboo in many cultures. I imagine being tangentially related to a neutral entity and operating outside of both the Star Chasers and the Federation, it wouldn't do well to boast about such a feat. And even still, were he to do so, few would likely believe such a tale. I barely believed it myself until my dear sorcerer friend was able to confirm the truth. Perhaps he's had to settle for lesser meats, but as I have said, Victor was quite the rogue.
I'm finding all this a little difficult to believe. Are you sure you've got the right Vonda heist? I'm sure there's another set of Vonda heists in a separate galaxy.
It was actually at the Advent and the Journey's End that he chose that name. I'm certain that it is you who I am looking for. And if I were to assume otherwise, the tales of your adventures have reached me more often than other similar upbringings that are occurring on the fleet as well. The story of you and your crystal dragons, rescuing a crystal dragon, appearing at the edge of a black hole, and liberating its people. Overwhelming a prominent member of the fleet. Robbing one of the 4 major guilds. If I am to obtain the Stuff of Legends, I must rely on those who I anticipate will be there with them. To say I have high expectations of you is no understatement, but I am certain that it is you I am looking for.
Well, this is certainly very flattering. After all, you know, Lyra and I did set out to make names of ourselves, and this seems to be quite the opportunity you're presenting to us on a silver platter, but could I have a moment to confer with my co-captains?
Of course, the hall is yours as you see fit. And should you need more privacy, I believe I can have that arranged.
I think in the hall is sufficient. Thank you.
She gives a nod and sort of rises from her spot and begins to sort of walk off towards the big, clear, open window. And just seems to ponder, holding the drink in one hand.
Lyra, are you believing any of this?
I mean, it does seem a little far-fetched to
It
think
seems
that
incredibly far-fetched.
he did like to embellish his story, his
But that's
stories.
all they were, was stories. I mean, our father is he's a businessman, a politician. He's not some gallivanting, rakish dragon slayer.
Oh, where did he always say that he found my egg? Just
You know,
gallivanting about?
he was kind of mum on the details about your acquisition, Lyra, but it was more like he and Mama found your egg essentially at a less than savory marketplace. He did admit that part, and was just so captivated by the beauty of the eggshell, and he said they presumed your egg dormant, which is why you were subsequently placed in the trophy room. But I mean, you know the story. As a youngster, I accidentally toppled the pedestal which your egg was upon and cracked you open, and much to our surprise, we found a living being in there. But it never was some sort of, adventure.
Well, believe me, I find this as hard to believe as you do, but if we were to look at holes in stories, then mine would potentially be the biggest. I do not believe that our father was able to single-handedly take down a solar dragon, the stuff of legends, as our dear Weaver is putting it, but
I mean,
what reason does he have to lie to us about this?
She's certainly been more than accurate with everything else.
and who's to say that he single-handedly felt the beast? I mean, like any adventure out into the vast unknown, or even a very pre-planned venture, one would have to prepare for all outcomes. I would imagine he himself at one point had a party, much like ours.
I mean, it's possible, but
He is quite
He never
wealthy for a politician.
he never said anything.
Perhaps there was something he wanted to shield you from.
I don't like the idea of Pa hiding anything from me. I mean, but close, he and I. And it just... I feel rather gutted at the thought that there's a whole other life that I don't know about.
Sometimes people lie to the ones they care about because they fear it would bring too terrible a burden on them.
Well, one moment. A thought just occur to me. These drow guards have accompanied us before on one of our excursions with Papa. Do you think that may have had something to do with this business here, rather than just being a leisure trip?
I mean, goodness, the pieces do seem to be falling into alignment, don't they? But it's possible.
Well, we were talking about writing a letter back home to Papa.
Oh, I certainly will now.
We have a few words to speak with him regardless of the outcome here.
Now, to the matter at hand, I would hate to put the both of you, Ashala and Zusa, in the forefront of my family's apparently messy affairs. I understand also that the promise of anything is quite an attractive reward. But
It's certainly an allure, I'll give you that. Although, if this item or items that they require is worth an entire fleet, it begs the question what dangers and tribulations will be needing to go through in order to obtain them.
my thoughts exactly, considering that one of them came from a solar dragon.
It also brings into question exactly the allegiances that our dear Weaver has with Lex Frigate. If he would be willing to sell him out for her personal gain.
It's also very true, and she'll sort of look around, see if there's anyone listening in before scooching closer to everybody. I have to wonder the manner of curse our Weaver finds themselves under, because I don't think it's strictly cosmetic. I don't think that it's just a few spider limbs they're trying to cure themselves of. I don't think...
Perhaps it's just present company, but I hardly feel as though that's particularly monstrous.
Could I, DM, do a history check just to see if I know maybe a little, or maybe even a religion check, perhaps?
Whichever you
In
find
regards-
preferable, sure. Go ahead.
I think religion might be a little bit more applicable here.
Okay.
Same roll either way.
19.
What does the Dryad symbolize in Drow culture and what it means to be one?
So, given that you grew up surrounded by Drow culture, you actually have a pretty good understanding of how Driders are viewed, especially in relation to the goddess Love. Depending on the origin of the Drow, some cultures will consider their Driders blessings. They are the product of direct intervention by Lolth, and some see it as essentially the ultimate shortcoming. You could ascend to become an avatar of the goddess, but instead you find yourself transformed into something that is essentially on the verge of a nervous breakdown 24/7, 365.
Oh.
It is also believed that such a form is so outwardly powerful that you are unable to change your form to even escape the sheer pain that it unfolds onto the user at a constant basis. You can't polymorph out of it, you can't true polymorph out of it, you can't disguise self. You are a Drider until you expire, or the goddess finds further use for you.
So, at least from the little I know of Drow culture, Driders have sort of a double sword symbolism. Some would consider it a blessing, a direct intervention from Lolth herself, an instrument of her will. Others would say it's a form of grueling punishment, one that cannot be altered or undone, and the process that one undergoes to become that is constant and painful, to say the least. To be a Drider could be also to suffer.
In the midst of the silence, you hear the sound of a glass shattering in the distance. And you see the Weaver's hand kind of just like twitching a little bit as they hold, like, trying to hold like the top of the wine glass together. And several of the guards kind of like sort of step forward, like walking towards them. And they turn, and you see that the Weaver is holding their hand, their wrist, and just going, no, 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 it's fine, just a small one. And another one comes over with a separate glass and takes the other one and starts cleaning up the wine that's on the ground and the shattered glass. And another one goes over to start treating the hand that is seemingly cut now.
Oh dear.
Quite. I won't speak further of it, but let's just say that there could be many reasons, and I'll leave it at that.
Mm.
Well, if the relationships between the Weaver and our father is as thick as thieves, as they might say, then why would they wouldn't send us out on a suicide mission? Because our legendary father that can apparently slay solar dragons would likely have words to speak with them.
Why not ask the man himself then?
If the Weaver has a sorcerer, then perhaps they would know a way to connect.
Maybe such a resource would be prevailed to us should we accept the request. And that is only if you're willing.
What are everyone's thoughts? We're all co-captains here, and everyone's opinion matters in such a monumentous decision.
If I may, I think I trust the Weaver a bit more than I trust our friend Lex Frigate in terms of aligning ourselves with folk. They seem to actually care about our well-being in some way, shape, or form. Whether or not it's entirely genuine, I don't feel like there was any genuine affection, good or bad, from the Admiral Lex Frigate.
As you recall from Lex Frigate in your discussion with him, each of the heads seem to have their own sort of personality, and as you say, many of them did seem to be less than trustworthy or very willing to throw you to the worst of whatever you could find out in space. But one of the heads in particular, the one with eye patches covering both of its eyes, the white head, seemed more willing to discuss, but unfortunately, when you are attached to several other heads that may not agree, it might make things a bit more difficult. So there's the mix of trust and go and prove yourselves, then I will make you perhaps worthy of more resources and support.
That's also to assume, however, that we would necessarily be required to perform any sort of betrayal.
Well, of course not, but
I don't know how soon I would be able to get into contact with Papa, but I would almost feel better making my decision after hearing from him. But I understand also that this is almost an opportunity that you can't pass up, Lyra. It seems this could be the chance to have all the answers that you've been searching for. And if it's what you want, you know I would do anything for you.
well, then I suppose I would say that I'm for hearing it out and for doing this. Though the revelations were a bit staggering, it is nice to have someone that is at least interested in wanting to find more. First we've really had of that. I guess the way that I would put it is, it's good to have friends in high places, and it doesn't seem to get much, well, high seems to be a bit of a strange word considering we're underground, but this would be a good start beyond just a tenuous relationship with some of the guild heads. So, hesitantly, but hopefully for it, I think is my opinion.
Zuza, Ashala.
Well, goodness, pardon the phrasing, I'm loath to turn down an offer such as this. I, granted, am involved in this whole affair for perhaps something of a more shallow reasoning than the discovery of one's true identity, as Ashala and Lyra are, but I should certainly want to find it out, and I would be remiss if part of the reasoning wasn't that the implication of the connections with my own family weren't quite as intriguing of a riddle I wasn't aware was a riddle.
Admittingly, I'm on the stance that the favor that's been inquired here, by our weaver here, our gracious host, I wouldn't say that what possibly would need to be done in order to obtain whatever it is he requires is worth, to say, simply knowing more about where I'm from or the gift or any of such things. It's a valuable resource, sure, but I can assume that there will be grand dangers that we've yet to see throughout the astral sea. But in the same breath, having a once-in-a-lifetime offer of anything between something so minuscule to then an entire fleet could also prove useful for anyone in this position. Honestly, while as of the moment, I might not have an immediate use for this, a promise of nearly anything is handy to have in your pocket.
Right.
I think we're all in agreement then. I think it sounds up we're setting ourselves for a grand adventure.
And isn't that what we set out to do, in a way?
It was. It was.
Well, I suppose we'll certainly learn more about what this grandiose venture will certainly be, but admittingly, I didn't see myself in this precarious situation.
You didn't
Aren't you
foresee
gla-
Go ahead, Maris.
I was just going to say, aren't you glad that we rescued you off of your alien-infested ship?
I mean, it certainly would have been a worse way to go.
Didn't expect to wake up today with a thing devouring your mind and then find yourself away into the second in command of the entire fleet at your beck and call?
And it's not even lunchtime.
Don't fill my head with such nonsense. I don't think I'd be able to lead. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's actually, get the laydown of what's to come.
Right. With that, Valentine will motion towards the Weaver, just a little subtle hand wave that she's ready to talk to them.
It kind of takes a moment because they're not quite listening and they're not certain if that was a hand signal between your group. But once they realize, oh, that's me, they sort of slowly yet gracefully, for their form, which they're not quite accustomed to, make their way over, and once more come to a rest at the table.
Well, after some deliberation, we have decided to answer the calling for this task, and we're ready to hear the details of what it is that you require.
Just to answer what is going on currently in the chat, there's currently a discussion going on about what pronouns people feel work best for the Weaver. And as you might be aware, they are currently going by they, them, they, she, as they are currently locked into their current form. The intention is that they are not quite comfortable truly expressing themselves formally yet. Ideally, they feel that they're not quite there yet. But in most situations, I imagine all pronouns would work in this particular situation.
Essentially, they don't have an idea what they want to be called.
Yes. Yes, they're not socially transitioned yet.
Man, if I had a nickel for every time in and out of character I fell for a princely, gender ambiguous monster person in this particular campaign.
You have 2 nickels.
At least, probably more.
Yeah.
Which is not a lot, but it's more nickels than I would have expected. But yes, the Weaver gets a smile that you almost see them try to struggle to contain as you accept. And they seem to be holding themselves gracefully as they're still supposedly this all-powerful individual. Charisma save, yeah, to take a look. You see right through them. They are overjoyed in their head. Zuza.
The hue of Zuza's blush goes up like just this subtle temperature change there. That's what my charisma save was for. Like how good is she at avoiding making it obvious?
It is impossible to tell.
Ooh.
But the Weaver perks up, and with a smile says, "Then let there be no more secrets between us. As a show of good faith, I'm willing to answer any and all questions you may have. Regarding your question about what it is I need for you to seek out, unfortunately, by the way of the wish, I am only revealed step by step. I do not see the entirety of the process, but I am aware that the next step is to obtain a psionic crystal, one that is quite prominent with Githkind, for recording, for chronicling, perhaps even sealing souls within, but one of the purest kind. And once it is obtained, it must be purified in a sort of chaos realm, a sort of place between places, if that is to make any sense. As you know, we are on a understanding that the barrier between worlds is something of disks stacked on top of one another. And our disk currently is spread apart by the astral sea.
Ooh.
So, Charlotte's face.
Yeah, what
You
was
can tell
that?
she can tell that she's trying to keep a very straight face about this, but just hearing the details of what you described and the item in question of what you need, she she starts to wince ever so slightly as she has I think gets where she has an idea of where she you're probably going to be wanting to go next to find this crystal.
Would you have something in mind?
Well,
I do not expect this information freely, of course.
Well, what you were describing sounds oddly enough very eerily similar to where I planned to go next. Funnily enough, one of the hints I've been given about more of myself was actually to go and visit a place such as a Chaos Rift.
She tilts her head ever so slightly. You are seeking more about yourself. Would you be able to perhaps tell me more going forward? I believe I may be able to divest some resources into looking into any information I may be able to procure. The gift network is not quite my strong suit, but I do know of one or two individuals who may have some details that may be of use to you.
Of course, and I appreciate the offer. It's just, I have, some steps I wish to partake first before I would like to make, use of such, such information.
Indeed.
But the place in question, if it's of, Gith origin, and one that aligns more with, well, matters of the mind, in the form of a crystal. Well, I couldn't think of any better place than the Chaos Rift, where I do believe where some of my gift brethren might actually be taking residence in.
This is not quite what I was expecting. How much do you know of the current ongoings within the Chaos Rift and of the Gith people as a whole?
Not much.
As I had mentioned slightly earlier, approximately 200 to maybe 300 years ago, the goddess Vlaakith was slain by one of her closest companions. This man has essentially taken her seat of godhood and has determined that she has been something of a traitor to the people of the Gith. As such, he has sought to unify the discrepancies between the Githyanki and the Githzerai. Interestingly enough, many of my former contacts were a part of the Githzerai. However, they have since fallen into disarray as this new god of sorts, who I have unfortunately no knowledge of, has decided that the only policy he has regarding the conjoining of the peoples is to join or to die. Many of my contacts chose to defend their people and have since gone silent. This place may be dangerous, and I am uncertain as to which faction you may have found yourself called to, but know that the Githyanki are not to be trusted. If you are to encounter them, do what you must. Swear allegiance to whatever ruler they may have, whatever god they may be propagating. But know that they have become ever more ruthless as time has gone on.
I will bear that in mind. I've heard whispers of what they were like, but to hear that is certainly no small comfort.
Forgive me if it was not quite what you were hoping to hear. But if it is where you choose to go, as I've said, I will provide any and all resources that may be of use to you in any of your endeavors going forward.
Of course. But do go on. The crystal in question. Is it such a place that you would find said crystal? Would you expect?
Interestingly enough, one of the major guild leaders of the fleet has come into possession of such thing. I believe it was meant to be auctioned at the Solar Winds Guild, in which case I had quite the buyer lined up. I believe
Oops.
we had set down the small price of 300,000 before it vanished.
Yes.
But it has since reappeared under the hands of one Phinia. And I believe she is holding a tournament for it in her casino. She's interested in getting something from the Gith herself. I have not yet heard what she's looking for, as unfortunately my spies don't quite go very far into Phinia's territory. She has much of her own network, and rather than cross wires, she provides me with information and asks that I only maintain a tangential look into her affairs. Much of her network is mine, yet anything that's as close to her chest as that, I know nothing more than the sheer outline of it.
I see. Well, at least the prize in question is a little more closer to home than I was expecting.
Indeed. Things tend to be closer than you would expect.
We were planning on going over there after this meeting, so it kind of just worked out in that way.
The question is, would we be able to procure this particular prize and remain in the relative good graces of Nia?
If you are to do so, perhaps you would enter this card dice tournament that she is hosting. I'm uncertain if any of you are skilled and recognize how to play any of these games. I do believe I have an individual looking to serve the role to participate myself, so I can procure the crystal once more. But I am uncertain if he is the most skilled in these types of games. Does anyone have proficiency in card games?
Oh,
I
God.
actually think I do.
Ooh.
Let me double check that though. Um,
I'm garbage and never keep track of that stuff. Hold on. I don't think I do, though.
it's not on my sheet, but I feel like I did get it as a part of my background.
I have been doing some investigations into each of your characters, and 3 of you are technically nobles.
Yep.
Lily, I don't believe you actually put anything for
Yeah, I did.
your background, so you can choose whatever you'd like.
Well, as you know, I have disadvantage on all deception checks, so
Yes.
something tells me it
worst,
shouldn't be
the
me.
worst poker face ever.
She would
Nico,
never
what cards do you
herself.
have?
Oh, I have an ace of clubs. What?
Why would you tell me that? Anyway, but yeah. If the option isn't there, you can still do it, and keep in mind that card games not necessarily the only game, and you don't really know too much about this tournament, and it seems that the Weaver does not either.
Well, if it's a card player you require, one of the skills I did inherit, as well as my apparent thirst of adventure, I did inherit my father's skill at playing cards.
Very interesting. I believe that would do quite well. Keep in mind, Vania is currently doing this for her own gain. If she has this item, which I'm assuming the gift desire, given how rare a pure psychic crystal is, why would she give it away? Unless she intends to give it to someone internally.
Or
Perhaps
perhaps it's a fake.
it could perhaps be a fake, but I believe at the auction we had someone verify its authenticity, though given how our dear Feobolg friend is known for collecting tchotchkes of all kind, which are nowhere near their true value, this one is of dubious claim, which is why I have not devoted my full resources towards it. But on the chance that it is true, I think it would be very, very straightforward as compared to other methods of obtaining it. Alternatively, if we are not obtaining it from Vania, we would need to seek out the depths of their minds on a planet we may be uncertain that they are in control of, for a resource they are not even certain is there. The alternative also is perhaps invading the Gith homeworld and attempting to take one of theirs, though I can't be certain that such a mission is anything less than a suicide mission. Which is why I believe seeking out Vania would be the best alternative. As I have said, I consider you my guests and my companions now. I would not send you on a mission where I intend for you to be hurt or to be harmed. As much as you may have my best interest in mind, I have yours.
Then, from my perspective, it sounds like we should at least be giving this a shot. Like, there's no harm in gambling a little bit. In order to
Indeed.
see if we can just sneak away with the treasure.
Should you need the funding to enter said tournament, I'm uncertain of your actual current monetary conditions, though, if I am to understand correctly, your golem friend did overly well for himself. In fact, a little bit too well.
How much would it be to enter the tournament?
I believe about 100,000.
Oh,
That's quite exclusive. Are the people who will be participating as well, if you know, also from the fleet, or will they be venturing in from abroad?
From my understanding, I am aware of how many individuals? I am submitting one myself. There is another who I had believed was working underneath Fania, who is participating. I believe there is one prominent member of the fleet, one of the guild members, masters perhaps, participating. And from what I've heard, there's talks that there may be some Gith influence involved. Keep in mind, however, that this facility is one of the most well-defended in the fleet. It runs under the policy that there is to be no bloodshed on the grounds or within a certain radius of the territory, as well as a prevention of harm. So, if you are going to go about it, I imagine the Gith will not be able to outright be hostile towards you if they wish to stay in the running themselves.
I imagine, that being said, that there is a understanding of peaceful intentions. We will not be able to waltz in armed?
You may be able to, given your connections to Fania. I believe that may be in your best interest, in fact, to go through her and attempt to support her odds further. I'm certain she has no need for this psychic crystal. She's almost as wealthy as I am.
Then, does she stand to gain anything in particular out of holding this little soiree? Is this just her modus operandi?
If I am to understand correctly, she has had quite a bit of conflict with the Gith over the more recent years. They, in particular, have noticed her fleet patterns and have started robbing her fleets in particular. This, I imagine, does not do well for her business, and as such, she is looking to get something out of it with them. Perhaps she means to extort them, she means to withhold something from them, perhaps she means to embarrass them in some way. I'm uncertain of the relation of who is arriving from their people to see said item, but there are individuals who are of interest.
Well, then it sounds like we have an objective.
I believe this is not for another couple of days. I'm uncertain of the exact time frame, but given the storm that is currently ongoing on the surface, I imagine that anyone who is seeking to flee will not be able to. Anyone who is seeking to join will not be able to. So perhaps this whole event may be at risk. Not to mention that I imagine the casino will be quite filled today, given the beddings that are ongoing for the gold finale and the potential platinum match, if I'm to understand correctly. Lots of betting to be done.
No shortage of that in the fleet.
Of course.
Do you know anything about this cosmic storm? By the way, now that we're partners.
Indeed, it's something of a rare occurrence. Though, if I'm to understand my particular contact for this sort of thing, this one is galaxy-wide, which is something that I've only heard happened perhaps once in recorded history. This type of storm will be lasting a very long time. Fortunately, spelljammers have been designed to have a method of transportation irregardless of the storm. All you will need is a science officer of some sort, or someone who is skilled with that of understanding star charts. And they will be able to chart you a course as if there is no storm whatsoever. If you go without one, however, it will cause issues with your perspective on the spelljammer. What may seem like a safe distance to travel may bring you directly into a star. I do have one particular individual who may be able to serve you if you are looking to travel. He may not be the best of company, but I'm certain that he will prove useful to your causes.
Well, we don't exactly have a reason to leave immediately, but I don't imagine that we will want to stay put on the fleet for... well, for the next long while, as you put it.
Especially not if we might be obtaining a certain artifact under less than scrupulous means.
Keep in mind
Right.
that you are allied to Fania, are you not? I believe you may just be able to offer your assistances. She is unaware of our current dealings. I have made sure of that.
It was
But
initially the plan to go feed her in order to best figure out what was going on with the storm, so...
fate
Either
works in
or.
such mysterious ways.
Yes, quite. It's remarkable sometimes, really, what it will do to bring people together.
Indeed. Now then, were there any other questions that any of you had regarding any topic in particular? I believe you are aware of what I ask of you. Now, what would it be that you ask of me?
I would be rather curious as to how precisely you have dealt with my family in the past.
House Sylvana is host of the Wolf Wardens, as you all know. Many times, when there is a death in the family, there tends to be turmoil. Tensions tend to run high, emotions boil over, and people feel a hunger of sorts. I believe that the last dealing I had was utilizing my sorcerer companion and having her perform something of a additional binding ward. Your bloodline is quite prominent and quite terrifying, if I'm to be entirely honest. Truth be told,
Certainly.
if it was that, in fact, that they reached out to me for something entirely different, in fact, the reason that they had reached out was for a similar reason that I am seeking out Victor. They believe that my quest is the same as theirs, that they believe that they might be able to purge your bloodline of the sun-devouring wolf.
So I just wanted to kind of soft ask this DM,
Of course.
since it's been a while.
Yes.
Is that the first time we've truly heard the sun-devouring wolf be talked about, like, in public?
Yes.
So that's the first time we've heard that there's a sun-devouring wolf inside of Suzette.
I believe that Zuza has mentioned it to everyone in the party at a few occasions. I believe there's been 3 separate occasions.
Okay. I was just like, wait a minute.
No, this is
we
not
don't know
new
the full
information.
extent.
They may
But
not have spoken about it in such
literal terms.
direct
Yeah,
terms.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, that might be. Actually, no, I believe it was the first time. So, Ashala, this is new information for you. At the most,
Oh, no.
you are aware that it is a quote unquote being of entropy. And that was all you needed to know, and you said, that's fine with me. I understand.
Oh. Well, okay then.
But surely enough, I unfortunately did not have the answer they were looking for, and in exchange for something of value to me, which I believe it may be of use at some point in time, I offered any information I had, and instead chose to go in the opposite direction and further bind the wolf to the bloodline. Now, for the wolf to be released, I'm uncertain of how much you've discussed with your companions. If you'd like, I can choose to stop here, but I am quite aware of the inner workings.
Oh, well, I would suppose that I have been feeling it rather more keenly than I would care to admit as of recent.
A very sudden look of concern crosses her face, and a few of the guards kind of like seem to grip their weapons a little bit tightly, and she goes, enough. Tell me, what have you been feeling in particular?
Well, hunger, I suppose, in the broadest of fashions.
No irritability, sudden losses of consciousness, fugue states.
Well, I wouldn't go that far as to say there have been none of those. I would actually say I have been recently in such a state, in as so much as I can not fully recall the goings on of the tourney. My compatriots and I were a party to, and I found, although perhaps not irritability, that I was more forward and perhaps too blunt with my emotional feelings.
Interesting. When is the last time you've spoken with a family member?
Goodness. Well, certainly at this point, I imagine it must be a few months at least that I've been away from home, so perhaps at the very least a month or so.
The current bonding that we have procured is that for every family member who is alive, the wolf is further spread and cannot be bound or unbound by a single individual. It was a very unique change to the condition, be it a blessing or a curse, given the benefits it also provides. It was contained. The only way for the wolf to truly return is if everyone in your bloodline were to pass. We were uncertain of the condition on if there was only one individual left, but I was assured that that wouldn't be much of a problem.
Right. Well, I suppose that is in the best interests of my family continuing forward.
Regretfully, I must say, as I may not be certain, but this may imply that someone in your family may have passed away. And maybe I'm uncertain of whether a conservative approach is better for this situation or not.
Oh,
Keeping you away would be safer from potential threats. Having you investigate would get us information I likely would not be able to get so freely on my own. I will look into this, but be on your guard.
yes, of course.
Your family is powerful, and I imagine that nothing short of extreme cases that would be resolved almost immediately, or the natural inclinations of fate would do such a thing. If this continues, let me know. In fact, I think it may be in your best interest to seek out my sorcerer. In the red light district, there is a woman named Cheryl. I wish you to seek her out and ask her to just look over you and tell her that I've sent you. She will know if you are lying or not, and she will understand that there is no possible way that you would have known otherwise, and she will understand.
Very well. That seems more than reasonable.
May be able to bind yours elsewhere, bind it tighter, but should you be interested, should my quest turn out possible, and it works, I may be able to free you and your bloodline. The question is whether or not we have the capacity to deal with consequences that may come as a result, but I believe that it may be possible.
Well, that would certainly be I would imagine, in best interests of more than just my family, but quite a great deal of people beyond that too, given the rather unpredictable nature of the war.
I must ask, as my knowledge on the Crystal Dragons is either secondhand or through direct information through certain events. Tell me your dealings with the Thrycreen.
Well, there is a very skillful physician that we had hired for our ship crew in our previous foray.
Just a single individual? Not any groups in particular, any minor factions, acolytes, nothing of the sort?
From what we know,
Just the good
Just the
doctor,
one.
Akhtar.
It's no secret that the Thrycreen hail from a formerly lush planet. They were of a planet of 2 suns. When one day one of the suns began to grow massively in size and proceeded to scorch the planet asunder. The Thrycreen have since become something of a stateless people and have taken to sailing the stars in search of what they might find as a new home, or perhaps an opportunity to bring back the one that they had. Some have taken to worshipping the sun-devouring wolf. Be aware that they may not know of you, as I have not heard any rumblings on that front, but they are aware of how they may obtain such power.
And that would be rather foolhardy on their accounts.
Indeed,
There's
but
one thing the wolf detests, it's the structure of one holding power over it.
that is something that they have come to accept. They likely would end up ruining their entire solar system and their homeworld in entirety, rather than simply having it obey one singular command. I'm uncertain of which individual in your family had stopped their cult of sorts in the past, but it was not an all-encompassing defeat on their part. There are still remnants. Just be aware that they may seek you out.
Very well. I will keep that in advisement. I thank you for your forewarning. Whilst we're on the subject of keeping abreast of things from a distance, would your sorceress friend also have some means of messaging across distance?
Indeed. She should perhaps even be able to bring you there directly, though I imagine she will be asking a fee.
Yes, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I imagine that my parents would be rather keen on seeing to my return.
See, that a fee to Cheryl is different. It's not monetary. She operates... For anything she does, she requires a cost of somewhat equal value, but not monetary. Monetary has never been anything of her gain. For example, for her services in helping me, I have promised her that I will renounce my position as a leader.
Oh,
I may maintain authority over others, but I can never be the face of authority. And to me, that is a very small price to pay. Traveling between rifts without being within the same plane space is quite the hefty spell to cast. And while I'm certain she's capable, there is a cost that she will hold on to.
I see. Well, it's good to know. Going into any endeavors with her to be aware of such cost. I will.
She is a witch as pure as witches come. She says with a bit of a sheepish smile. Would that I could change her, but she is infinitely older and more authoritative than I am. Will that be all? For now, at least.
Is there a way that that is to say, my party would be able to reliably contact you?
most forms of communication are traceable. Coming here directly is, I imagine, more of a trip than you are comfortable with. If you are looking to contact me again, I may be able to provide an item of sorts, provided we are in the same plane space. But to transfer communications outside of that would be one-way communications delivered directly from Cheryl. If you find a way of contacting me, you may reach me through one of various means. Perhaps any particular individual. I may be able to arrange an individual to support you in your spacefaring endeavors, as well as one who is able to contact me directly. I may be able to serve both roles.
Sounds a splendid arrangement.
Well, thank you for this information. And, well, your hospitality. I think we have a lot to discuss amongst ourselves going forward.
Weaver gives a very affirming nod. Should you need me while you are in my territory, you know how to reach me. And I'm certain that my guards will prove no trouble to you.
We are known then?
We are.
Hmm. Just a quick question,
Indeed.
if you don't mind. Very quick. There was one time when we were younger that we had a drow escort with Papa. Was that your doing?
My memory is not quite as excellent as I would like it to be, but it's possible that it may have been a contact of ours, perhaps his means of contact to me. There's plenty of operatives I've had who have since stopped working for me. They believe they have gotten everything they need from me. I do not
Just
hold
curious.
anyone to contract as much as long as they are supporting me, I shall be in support of them. Though I do recall 2 contacts in particular. One of which has since stopped working for me and begun working for Fania under reasons I'm uncertain of. And the other has long since retired. I believe about the same time, so perhaps that may be the individual you are speaking of.
Well, thank you.
Valentine, do you have any other particular questions?
I have a veritable flood of potential questions.
I may have something in mind, though I imagine it's not quite the most stealthy means of communication. And she is going to reach into their pocket and pull out a singular rolled up scroll. And they're going to reach out across the table and place it in front of you. This is something that you can use to write to me. If you write something on this page, it will disappear almost immediately and will travel through arcane means directly towards me. The issue is that any communication through it becomes encrypted in a means not so dissimilar to thieves' cant. For each individual who writes on it, however, it becomes increasingly more esoteric. My answers to you, should you not be willing to sit here and discuss with me further, will become something of riddles. But, as I've said previously, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
You see, the thing is, as befuddled as I currently am, by new revelations, I think I'd rather hear it from my father, if it's all the same.
Indeed. If you do happen to speak with him in person, be sure to give him my regards.
Of course. Anything that I have going into this, just for future reference, assuming that we are successful in our endeavors. As of now, there's nothing I really want. So I hope that in lieu of repaying me for my part in this, I would have you double your efforts for Lyra's.
I see. I believe we never really discussed in full detail what I'm aware of. The Lamia people, they have been under siege for some time. Millennia, even. I'm uncertain as to the specific details, but many times, and I believe one book has overtly propagated such a thing, that Lamia are compared to Meriliths. This is not entirely inaccurate, yet not entirely true. The Lamia have been cursed by something beyond the gods, and have something of an inclination towards the Chaos Planes. It is within their bloodlines to transform into Merilith. This was consistent until one god in particular, the god of the Lamia, chose to sacrifice himself. As to what change this had made, the only thing we're aware of is that it altered the state of some Lamia and made them, I believe the term translates to starkin. They're attuned to the constellations, which is why imagine my surprise when something of a fairy tale walks directly into my banquet hall. She shoots a very kind smile. This is why I say you may be the last of your kind. The Starkin have the potential to directly grant wishes. However, wielding the power of pure creation is dangerous. There is always a cost, and unless it is something defined within rules of magic that are not necessarily my forte, there stands a very real risk of destroying your soul in the process, which is why my warning was given to you. It is rumored that your people have changed over time. It is uncertain if the Merilith curse still affects them, or if there is a means of being able to change differently. Perhaps they sought a means to defend themselves, and perhaps that is why you were sent away. Perhaps you hold the key to something that they have been looking for.
Some sort of grand destiny.
Perhaps. I believe forgive my intrusion, but I did overhear a bit of your discussion earlier. Forgive these sharp ears of mine. I did attempt to not listen in. It's a bad habit of mine, as you might know. You had mentioned something of a merchant, no?
Well, yes.
At least that's what I was told.
If you are looking for something of a direct answer, I would seek out the Mercane. They are a race of essentially mercantile people. They are nomadic in nature. Many of them have chosen to take up residence here in the underside in the black markets, where they feel that unrestricted trade is the best kind of trade. They have arguably as good networks as I do. And if it comes to something being sold of a particular oddity, they will most certainly be aware. Unfortunately, much like Cheryl, they will also be expecting a cost of some kind. They enjoy information more than anything. I'm uncertain of what they may ask of you, but if it is something within my means, I will be able to procure that for you. Perhaps I may give them a letter of introduction. Perhaps that would do well. Yes.
I think anything of the sort would be helpful. I must admit, it all seems a bit too much for just someone of my stature who just simply wants to not be looked at strangely and just live their life. To say that there is this cosmic destiny or something that awaits me, it's not exactly something that I guess I would consider myself pleased to hear, but
She kind of just ponders off for a moment and thinks. Yes, I understand what you may mean. Though, such as
most
fate.
people here would be excited or ecstatic that they are something special, but I just find myself a little worried, if anything.
I see.
That there could be someone that could just wish me ill for just being who I am.
As you say
Or
the word,
exploit me.
the Weaver kind of just like tenses up for a moment and then immediately relaxes. Do be careful with that. But yes, it's possible. As I've mentioned, very few are aware of how detailed you are. Interestingly enough, you said you worked for well, not said, but I'm aware that you work for Finia, and none of this information was made relevant to you. Finia is a scholar, an old dragon kin, Lamia being one of them. I'm surprised this information hasn't reached you.
Well, we were on our way to speak with her. If she had any idea related to the storms that now currently find themselves in my being.
Indeed. In regard to that, I will send an individual to go speak with you.
An individual?
Yes, the one who will serve as your star chart reader, an astrologer of sorts. His name...
That would be
Go on.
lovely.
Forgive me.
Oh, I simply was just going to say that would be fantastic. That would be lovely.
Indeed. He goes by many names. Whichever name he chooses to introduce himself as, accept that as his title. He is prone to changing on a whim. It may be a nature of his upbringing, given that how close he was to the Feywilds, but do be careful around him. He's quite the interesting individual.
No shortage of those here.
Indeed. In any case, if you are off to see Finia, personally, I have no concept of time in my present condition, but I imagine that you do. I do not wish to keep you if you have other business to attend to.
Well, I think we have a heading. I know we are planning on visiting Finia already, but now it can serve a dual purpose.
Indeed. I'm certain that I have picked the right individuals for the task. Should you ever need anything, as always, you are free to come and speak with me.
Of course. Thank you for all of this. You've been refreshingly forthcoming.
Indeed. Perhaps it's something of an unknown habit of mine. It's been a long time since I've been able to speak candidly. Many of my personal guard here are people who have devoted their lives to me. As much as I may ask something of them, how much of that is going to be influenced by their devotion? Each of you have perhaps some allegiance to me based on what I hold in exchange for you, but that is allegiance that is freely given. I enjoyed our little chat.
As did I. You gave us much to think about.
And please, if you have not had your fill of something to eat or something to drink, please. It is of no consequence to me.
Oh, yes, I had quite forgotten of about that.
Valentine will just take a glass of wine in front of her and down it in one gulp.
Zuza extends her feeding proboscis into the bottle, and you just see the red get less and less and less saturated colored.
The Weaver seems entirely unfazed by all of this and just seems to smile.
Okay, I guess I'm rolling again.
You really want to roll badly on this, don't you?
I mean, look, if people notice, people notice. But the reflex to have a stiff upper lip still holds.
For many of you,
Oh, and of course, Zotz is also eating.
oh yes, he is enjoying some of the fresh fruits. For many of you, this will be perhaps some of the finest food you've had since perhaps back home. Ashala, this is something that you've had maybe once or twice after an extremely successful job, especially with your father. But after he had sent you out on your own to go discover who you are, it's been a lot harder to come by.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's just been, listening in the entire time, just like eating while everyone's been talking. So she's definitely getting plenty stuffed.
Lyra eats, but is kind of very much lost in thought and doing so slowly.
And I believe it is getting a bit late. How are we feeling? Do you want to continue onwards? Or do we feel that we have successfully gotten a significant amount done today?
I feel like this is a good place to stop, considering we're about to go into another situation afterwards.
Yes.
Indeed.
You might get a little overloady.
Yes, I know there's a lot of information all at once. Lots of lore dumping today.
The lore, DM. Give us the lore.
Finally, it's good to talk. I understand how the Weaver is feeling. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you all for joining us. I still have quite a bit saved up. I'm glad that you all are as enthusiastic about all of this as I am.
Of course.
Yeah.
Let's see who's around. I see... you know who would be good to go and visit? Arabin Thilior, maker of VTS Pog. Let's go with Phil. Is it 2 L's? Eeyore. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope to see you all in our next adventure, which we will have for Comet Tales. Not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday afterwards, where we will explore a bit more and hopefully go on more adventures and find out some more about this interesting deal that the Weaver has set up for everyone. Go ahead and say goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, y'all.
Was it that obvious?